Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Friday morning to you all. I hope you guys are doing well out there. It is Friday. I imagine most of us are feeling pretty great. I know I am. And if you guys aren't, I certainly hope your day gets much better. Here to give you an update on Hurricane Lee. We've been talking about Hurricane Lee for about 3 years now. At least it feels like we have. But it looks like we will begin to stop talking about Lee here in the next few days, as ultimately it will make a landfall this weekend and fully dissipate. But we're going to continue to pump out the latest information, and we will do that in this video. We'll talk about the track, model guidance, impacts, and break it all down for you folks as far as what we know. We'll also talk about what's going to happen weather-wise for today, because there is some severe weather possible across areas of the south central U.S., so we'll give you some updated information on that and get you guys on your way. So if you folks have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you do like it. And thank y'all for understanding about not pumping out a video yesterday evening. Just had some home repairs with my house that kind of came up. And, thank God for good friends that can help you out. And I certainly have some great friends. So if you guys got anything I can pray about or pray over, please put it in the comments below so I can do that. Not only do I pray over it, guys, but others do too. I've not had a chance to look at the comments from the last 2 videos. I do apologize. Just been a crazy last 24 hours, but I will get to those this afternoon. So don't think that I'm not reading your stuff. I certainly am. I read every single comment, even the negative ones. So let's get rolling. So this is Hurricane Lee. If you notice and you've been tuning in for a while, Lee looks nothing like how he looked even 24 hours ago. He is in the process of losing his tropical characteristics and getting a lot of dry air wrapped into its circulation. And most of the convection, meaning shower and storm activity, is basically being pushed, kind of shunted off to the north, and then eventually we'll get fully pushed off to the northwest and west. So a lot of dry air getting wrapped in. Lee is also helping to basically push in the low levels dry air down into the southeast, which, for you folks that are tuning in from the Carolinas, Virginia, and just pretty much everybody in the eastern U.S., except maybe Georgia, points south and west, are waking up to a beautiful fall-like air mass this morning. Another way to look at this is water vapor loop. As you can tell, hopefully this works, and it does. We're good. Water vapor loop shows it well. A lot of dry air kind of getting wrapped into the circulation of Lee, and this will continue to be very evident on water vapor loop here in the next 24 hours. I think it'll even look more clear soon. But I mean, you got a ton of dry air just pretty much wrapped into the actual low-level circulation of Lee. You can tell, you got the areas of kind of white. The eye, I mean, technically is very large, but it's not really an eye like you would think in like a full-fledged major hurricane. It's not the way this hurricane is structured anymore. But you got the cloud field extending all the way up here. Of course, this is water vapor loop. This just indicates moisture in the atmosphere, not necessarily clouds, but you pretty much got this cloud field pretty much extending way up here into southeast Canada and Maine now. So very impressively large storm out there for sure. So we'll give you the latest information from the National Hurricane Center from 5 a.m. It's an 85-mile-per-hour storm. As you can tell, the wind field from Lee is very, very large, hundreds of miles wide as far as this yellowish orange color. That means if you're in this area, like Bermuda still is, you're getting tropical storm force wind gusts, which is 39 miles, pretty much 40 miles per hour or higher. As you can tell, this remains a hurricane through tonight, and then will likely be downgraded to an extratropical storm. Another way to look at this is this Zoom Earth. It's a great thing to look at. It's free, available to the public, combines the tropics with Google Maps. I feel like that's kind of what it does. It seems like it, but the sun is coming up on Lee. Like I said, Lee's an 85-mile-per-hour hurricane. Might maintain that status throughout the day and tonight, but then will downgrade to probably just below hurricane status to a post-tropical storm or cyclone, whatever you want to call it, as it makes its approach and makes its landfall probably sometime tomorrow afternoon. But the impacts will be felt from this well before tomorrow afternoon. You will begin to feel impacts in all these areas by probably this evening into tonight. Tropical storm warnings up for southeast Mass, all the coastal regions of Mass. This does obviously include Cape Cod, Nantucket, Martha's Vineyard. You guys just stick out a little bit much further than, Boston, places like that. But tropical storm warnings extend all the way up into the coastal regions of Maine, and then you go into hurricane watches. We'll see if these get upgraded to warnings. They have not yet, but you got hurricane watches for the down east coastal regions of Maine, and then into the far southwestern coastline of New Brunswick. Okay, I think yesterday I was calling New Brunswick Newfoundland, so I do apologize. I do know the difference. This is Newfoundland. This is the New Brunswick area. So I just get them mixed up every once in a while. For folks that tune in often, know that I like to call Florida. I like to call Florida Texas for whatever reason. If you hear my phone going off, I do apologize. It's vibrating and gets the monitor. But this is the latest. You got hurricane watches up also for areas of southwest Nova Scotia, and then tropical storm warnings that do extend all the way up the southern coastline of Nova Scotia, and then tropical storm warnings up into the coastal regions of the Bay of Fundy also. Got a little bit of a nose itch right there, so if you see me scratching my nose, just because my nose itches. But the European model here, it's coming up here. I mean, it's pretty much ball game now, guys. The impacts will begin. But I will show you the Euro and the GFS. I'm not going to spend an eternity on this like I have been in the previous videos. But most model guidance agrees. The Euro and the GFS pretty much agree now. This is the latest Euro starting this evening. This comes up, brings that rain shield into southeast Mass, even into Rhode Island. Gusty winds will begin, rain-driven rain. Nothing too crazy. I mean, I would say this will be, for you folks, a below a nor'easter status. Now, you get on up the coastline of Maine, up into the down east regions of Maine, like up here. Okay, I think this is going to be a different story. I think this will be a pretty powerful storm for you folks. But here it comes Saturday morning, beginning to move into, the impacts are beginning to be felt into New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, certainly the St. John area, the Yarmouth area. Definitely like the Cape Sable area will certainly be highly impacted by this. Now, if you compare it with Fiona, we don't know. I would venture to say, if I had to make a guess at it, I don't think this will be as high impact as Fiona for some of these areas. Of course, Fiona took a little bit of a different track, right? But, I definitely think this will be a pretty impactful storm, though. We move to the GFS as far as what it shows. And, I didn't finish this. We'll continue to move through this. And as we get into Saturday afternoon, this technically never really makes a landfall into Nova Scotia. And eventually it just moves directly into the St. John area. In fact, it literally comes on shore, I would say, a tick west of the city of St. John, and then makes landfall ultimately in New Brunswick, okay? And brings a, wind-driven rain, strong winds. I know you guys measure wind a little bit differently up here. But if you compare this to the GFS, okay, same thing. I mean, it's not much different. It kind of comes in. It's a tick further west initially, and then it gets into the Bay of Fundy and makes landfall pretty much in the same area, sometimes Saturday evening. But it would actually make landfall technically just east of the city of St. John. But I mean, all those specifics don't matter a ton. What's great is the models have pretty much came together that this is most likely going to make a technical landfall where that low-level circulation is, probably into New Brunswick, and then kind of creep itself into the Bay of Fundy, bring some high tide, definitely some storm surge into this region, and then we'll cruise and start to move more northeast rather than north. A little bit closer look at the GFS here for all of southeast Canada. Remember, I really think the west side of the storm will be the most impactful side of the storm, will bring the most impacts. I'm going to have to move that phone. It's making way too much noise and throwing me off here. But it creeps north, and then it begins to kind of tuck into the Bay of Fundy on the GFS and makes that landfall right around the city of St. John. And it continues to chug northeast, and then might move almost east-northeast, and then affect, Prince Edward Island, and bring some impacts for you guys probably late, probably Saturday night into Sunday morning. Just a wind-driven rain. I don't think you're going to have catastrophic conditions or anything really anywhere in southeast Canada. But I do think it's going to be a high-impact storm if you're along the coastal regions of New Brunswick. If you're in the western side, and the basically the western shoreline of Nova Scotia. I think it's going to bring some very strong winds for you folks. I really do. So definitely, prepare the hatches out there for sure. Now, we're talking about wind gusts. We'll kind of move through this quick. Don't want to get too specific on this because, ultimately the weather's going to do what it does. But, you could get 50 to 60 mile per hour wind gusts out on Cape Cod. Same thing with Nantucket, Martha's Vineyard, maybe a touch lower. But, Boston could get a 40 to 50 mile per hour wind gust. A lot of this information hasn't changed since yesterday morning. I'll be completely honest with you guys. There's been no substantial changes. But, you're going to get 40 to 50 mile per hour wind gust, not sustained, but wind gusts right on up the Maine coastline and moving a little bit further up the coastline. I wish we can get a more zoomed in look at Maine. But, if you live right along this area of Maine, the down east regions of Maine, you're certainly going to get some wind gusts, probably pushing 50, 60, maybe 70 miles per hour. Maybe get a hurricane force wind gust for sure. So be prepared with this. And it does show the wind field definitely being substantial, even though I think most of the rain will fall on the west side of the storm. The wind field will still be stout, even on the east side of the storm. And who does that east side of the storm include? Well, it includes you folks in Nova Scotia. But you look at the GFS, this is in miles per hour. I know you folks in Canada measure it, I believe, in kilometers per hour. So this, I'll show you miles per hour first. Shows as high as on the GFS as a 60, 65, maybe even a 70 mile per hour wind gust into the coastal regions of Maine. Okay. Same thing right on Cape Cod. So you're definitely going to get some tropical storm force conditions, and that's ultimately why you have tropical storm warnings. Now you start to get into the Bay of Fundy. GFS is saying you can get a 50 to 60 mile per hour wind gust into St. John. Okay. And we'll go on and switch it to kilometers per hour for y'all folks. And, and that's equivalent to an 87 kilometers per hour wind gust. You move a little bit further down the coastline of New Brunswick, you start to get over 100 kilometers per hour. Okay. And then, you get into Nova Scotia, Yarmouth area, wind gust over 100 kilometers per hour are likely. Okay. If you're tucked in against these kind of southwestern and western coastline of Nova Scotia, you're definitely going to get tropical storm force conditions at minimum. And you could get a hurricane force wind gust out there, which is considered in miles per hour, pretty much 75 miles per hour or higher. Now, for my folks over here in Prince Edward Island, you folks could get some wind gusts pushing 70 to 80 kilometers per hour. Was it Charlottetown? Could get a wind gust in around 75, 85 kilometers per hour. And, I know I've kind of left my folks in Newfoundland kind of hanging lately. We'll kind of go over to you folks too. I really think this storm will lose some steam by the time it gets to you guys, but definitely some gusty winds. You guys could push, probably 60, 70, maybe at times 80 kilometers per hour out here, and converted that to miles per hour, because I would like to have a better idea what this is in miles per hour. And for whatever reason, well, it's because I'm in the Newfoundland slot, so it doesn't even give me a miles per hour option. It says, hey, you're only going to use kilometers per hour. But yeah, it's going to get gusty for you folks, probably more so into Sunday, into Monday. And this will be, a gnarly little storm for you guys too, but I don't think it's anything you guys can't handle. But, this is going to be your typical kind of nor'easter that kind of rides up from the northeast into you folks in southeast Canada. So certainly be prepared for this. Definitely some impacts going to be felt. This is the timeline, earliest reasonable arrival time of tropical storm force conditions. Freeze the screen if you need to, pause it. I don't want to name out every single timeline. It's pretty clear on your screen. But impacts will start to be felt in a lot of areas as early as this evening. And then obviously as we work our way further north and northeast, it'll be later in time into this weekend. So storm surge has actually dropped for the Cape Cod Bay. So just widespread 1 to 3 feet of surge is possible, basically from the Long Island regions all the way up to the down east areas of Maine. So storm surges actually went down a little bit. It's probably because we've had some ticks further east in model guidance. But like I said, we are going to have a tight rainfall gradient. Areas of Western Mass might not get a drop of rain or measurable precipitation. Okay, but you work your way, more and more east, you start to get a soaking rain, and by the time you get into like Boston, you could get a solid inch of rain from this, maybe not. But by the time you get out, in the communities in Southeast Mass, certainly going to get 2, 3, maybe as much as 4 inches of rain. If you're tucked in there's a small geographical region that's probably considered the coastal regions of New Hampshire, maybe an inch or so in rain. The southern regions of Maine, certainly 1 to 2 inches of rain, but the further you get on up the coastline, of course, the closer you get to the actual center of the storm, and you can get 4 to 5 inches of rain here in the down east areas of Maine. Even up here in Caribou, 2 inches of rain is possible. Central Maine, 2 to 3 inches of rain is likely. We look at the GFS, because the National Weather Service forecast does not go into southeast Canada. You folks, as far as inches, could get, you can get 2 to 3 inches of rain into St. John, 1 to 2 inches of rain in Nova Scotia. If you notice, not a lot of rain for Nova Scotia, and you're thinking, the track almost pretty much makes landfall in western Nova Scotia with some models. Well, remember what I talked about how I think the east side is going to be much drier than the west side. That doesn't mean the winds are going to be weaker. It just means that it's going to be drier. So a lot of dry air is getting wrapped on the bottom side of Lee, then getting pushed to the east side of Lee because of this trough over the eastern U.S. I don't think you guys will get as much rain. But let's go on and switch this to millimeters for you folks. And I'm going for maybe 50 to 60 millimeters of rain off the GFS in the St. John region, the city of St. John. For Yarmouth, maybe 40 to 50 millimeters of rain. And no blockbuster amounts by any means. Really isn't. You take it over to Newfoundland and, could get some enhanced rain into this region, but still not a ton of rain. I know you guys have picked up a lot of rain from what I'm hearing for you folks up here, but not a ton of rain up here at all. I mean, nothing too crazy, but of course, if you've already had a lot of rain, 2 to 3 inches of rain is a lot. But considering the fact that a lot of tropical cyclones can produce a lot more rain than this, it's probably on the lower side. But I mean, this thing is still at 957 millibar low. That's one thing to notice, but like I said, it's losing those tropical characteristics, and it's losing a lot of meat to Lee out here. But Margot's still out there in the North Atlantic, has weakened back into a tropical storm. We got 2 areas of interest, guys, that we need to watch. This one, I don't know how long this will stay an area of interest, but there is a tropical wave that's going to emerge off the west coast of Africa. But this is an invest. I really think this will become a hurricane at some point. Has a 90% chance to become a depression or a tropical storm over the next several days. And we will watch this, and we'll pump out some detailed information on what will likely be Nigel in the coming days as we get into this weekend. Will probably be a heavy topic. What's going to happen weather-wise for today? Dry air is really moved into most of the eastern U.S. In fact, the cool thing about Lee is with the flow of Lee going like this, okay, that's not exactly where the center of the storm is. It's actually helping to yank down dry air in the low levels and pushing it down into the southeast. Okay, so we're going to get some dry air that's already pushing to the Carolinas, certainly into Virginia. In fact, I think, what is it called? Cannon something in West Virginia. I saw somebody post this morning, buddy of mine up here in Virginia. He said it got down to 24 degrees in West Virginia. Like Cannon Ridge, Cannon Valley, I think is what it is. That's pretty wild. We got some energy flying from the upper base of this from the base of this trough. We're going to have some big storms in Texas today. So I'm definitely excited about the dry air pushing in this morning. In fact, I'm excited just to walk out my door here in a minute and take my girls to school and just feel the refreshing air. But as far as rainfall falling out there right now, there's a stripe of rain that basically stretches from northeast Colorado, very skinny, all the way up to Lake Superior. So rain falling in all these areas in a very narrow area. You got some storms down here in Texas. You even got one severe warned storm. Some rain falling in Kansas and areas of western Oklahoma. An area of rain that's just kind of chilling in one area here in central and kind of east central Georgia, not quite into Augusta, but this is actually prompting flash flood warnings right now in areas of Georgia where you're right at the south side of this boundary separating dry and moist air. Storms today, there is a severe risk. There's a slight risk, level 2 out of 5, risk of severe weather. So we need to watch out for this. The marginal is a level 1 out of 5. Even got a little marginal up here in the north central U.S. I do think we're going to get some supercells that could produce some large hail in this region, some gusty winds, and there is a tornado threat. That's your tornado threat, a 2% risk of a tornado within 25 miles on any given location. That's your wind threat, 5% risk, and the hail threat is a 15% risk. Hail threat could increase today. I wouldn't be surprised if they drop the hatched risk with this. Excessive rainfall outlook, a slight risk for central and kind of the hill country region of Texas. Could get some flooding rains in this region today, so be aware. Watches and warnings, not a whole lot going on out here, guys, except the tropical storm warnings up in the northeast. But we already discussed that. Of course, we know that Lee is on the way. Here's Lee right here. As far as rainfall, we'll watch to see how much more rain develops as dry air kind of tries to push itself against this moist boundary into Georgia. And I do think we're going to get some storms that pop up in kind of central, south central, and southern Georgia. I think pretty much anybody in there. See, I almost did it. I almost called Florida, Texas. I don't know why I do that. I think pretty much everybody in Florida has a chance to see a shower and storm. And pretty much everybody in Texas does too, but we'll get to that. But some showers and storms are possible here in Alabama, especially the central and kind of north and northeast and northern portion of Alabama. Some pop-up downpours are possible for you folks in southern Mississippi, the Bayou of Louisiana, southern Louisiana. Certainly possible, but once you get into Tennessee points north, you got dry air in place, stable air. Not going to get much of anything. I will talk on this dry air. I had somebody ask about it in the comments. Dew points are dropping in South Carolina. They've already dropped for almost all of North Carolina and certainly already in a beautiful air mass up in Virginia points north. But this dry air, dew points into the 50s. These are not temperatures. These are dew points. Once you get dew points below 60, that's when you start to get that crisp air. And this will certainly surge in from the northeast. Basically, a northeast push from Lee will help basically yank down these drier dew points into the Carolinas. And guys, by the time we get into this evening, if you're going out and about on the town from basically Columbia to Asheville, Greenville, Spartanburg, Charlotte, Raleigh, points north. I mean, the eastern North Carolina looks wonderful. Myrtle Beach, down to Charleston. I would argue that the air will be nicer in areas closer to the coastline, South Carolina, than it is in the central state, just because you're tucked in closer to this northeast flow. But beautiful night to go out on the town. It really is just a fantastic night for Friday night lights. Beautiful early fall-like September day for sure. Northeast, pretty quiet day today. There's not really anything to talk about. You can see Lee approaching on your screen. Use today to really prepare, because as we get into this evening, we get into the kind of the late night hours, wee hours of the morning for Saturday. Here comes the rain taking over southeast Mass and all the communities out there. This rain makes it all the way to Rhode Island, to eastern Long Island, and then we're waking up tomorrow morning with the impacts being felt of Lee, basically from eastern Long Island, eastern Connecticut, all the way up to the down east areas of Maine and, of course, Canada too. So this is when we're waking up tomorrow morning. So this is getting into tomorrow morning's forecast. Now, over here in the south central U.S., you guys are going to get some boomers today for sure. Some strong storms could, affect you guys throughout the day. I mean, already, tomorrow, this afternoon, you will have a cluster of storms flying through the central areas of Texas, working their way southeastward. But, we could get more showers and storms that develops here in southern areas of Nebraska, central and eastern Kansas. Central and western Kansas, western Oklahoma, certainly in Colorado. And we'll go on and get a closer look at these storms here in Texas. These are some big storms. You got this cluster of storms you need to watch here in central Texas, and this is around 1 to 2 p.m. this afternoon, riding through central Texas. Looks like it's heading right towards Houston and then dissipates. And then we'll have the explosive development of more storms down here, kind of in the hill country of Texas. Definitely some storms firing off around Odessa, up to Lubbock, and all these, Fort Stockton. Definitely some storms will be flying around out here, and some of these could produce some big-time hail. Some supercells could be out there, and we cannot rule out some tornadoes. In fact, you look at the updraft velocity swath for these regions, and I have to go to the 06Z, and there's definitely some indications of some rotating thunderstorms out here. That doesn't mean all these are going to produce a tornado. It just means that some of them can. All right, so definitely be prepared. North central U.S., this area of showers will continue to fly eastward. And I think by the time, let me go on and scoot this back. I think this will take over the western UP of Michigan, where some rain showers will begin to move into the region. This will make its way throughout the UP of Michigan, make for a kind of a rainy afternoon. Could get some storms. There is a marginal risk of storms up here too. I think maybe this line begins to weaken in Iowa. But as we're making our way to a Friday evening, maybe a little bit of rain around Green Bay up here into the UP of Michigan. And then we get into tonight. Some showers will ride over Lake Michigan and the Great Lakes region. We'll wake up to some showers maybe in western Illinois and then the northern half of Missouri tomorrow. Out west, not really a lot to speak on, guys, except Colorado, southern Colorado, some snow falling in the Rockies. Some storms are possible in New Mexico. Could get 1 or 2 lone storms in northern Arizona as the monsoon season begins to kind of mellow down this year. But once you get into overnight to tomorrow morning, pretty quiet. Temperatures, sorry, I'm rushing through this. I'm running very low on time now. But temperatures, beautiful day, especially if you're north of that boundary into that dry air. The winds will begin to pick up here in the northeast. It'll be a breezy, cool day up here. And 70s and 80s across the middle of the country. And you go out west. Warm along the extreme western areas, but once you start to get into the mountainous regions, it's pretty pleasant. Nothing too bad. You guys have a fantastic Friday. I'll have a video later this evening. God bless all y'all, and I'll talk to you soon.